I'm going to take you through the context card, which is our primary written record that we use at the field school excavations, and you probably encounter a similar sort of sheet or card at any excavation you ever attend. Now, the purpose of this card is to create a standardised description of any archaeological deposits or features that we encounter. These are then filed into our archive, and then we can refer back to these at a later date to kind of get a description of any of the features or deposits that we're quite likely to have removed, completely destroyed through excavation. Now, our sheet is divided into two sides, the front on the left and the back on the right, and further information about these can be found in your handbook on pages 38 to 55. But I'm going to take you through briefly the sheet and how we fill it out. So starting with the left hand side, at the front, at the top, we have the site code box, which is a site code is a unique identifier which is provided us by the county council, usually starting with an A with us and the year. So it'll be something like A 2019.38, referring to the number of sites that the council have kind of allocated codes to that year. The trench box and the plan zones. The trench obviously refers to the number of the trench that you're in. So at the bars, we've excavated 4 trenches so far, and as we move into a different area, a different kind of discrete area of excavation, we allocate a new trench number, so trench 5, 6, whatever. Plan zone, that refers to the plan grid that we have across the entire site. We use the Ordnance Survey and we divide it up into 10 metre grids and then divide those up into smaller areas, so we know exactly where we are within the Ordnance Survey, and we can drop that later date into things like GIS, so we can pinpoint exactly where any archaeological feature or deposit is in a sort of 3D way. Now, the context number, that's the unique number that's allocated to any archaeological deposit or feature. This all comes from a central register, so we usually start something like 1,000, and then so every feature or deposit has this unique number. We have a context type. There's a tick list you can see. So we have 3 principal types there. We can see deposit, fill or cut. Deposit refers to things like floor surfaces or kind of soil deposits, soil layers basically. Fills are fills within cut features, so that could be the fill of a post hole, a pit, beam slot, a ditch. And cut, that basically refers to any cut, any hole that's made into the ground, so like a pit, foundation trench, post hole, etc. So if you're filling out a context sheet for a deposit, we have the box deposit type. From within that, you pick from a list that we have of standard keywords. So these keywords fit into our database, and you don't want to deviate from those keywords really, because that basically would affect the database. So we need to have a very kind of fairly rigid system of description. So a deposit type may be something like floor surface or accumulation deposit, etc. But these are all very standardized terms that we use. If you're filling out the context sheet for a fill, so you have things like fill type. So this will be something like fill of post hole, fill of pit, fill of ditch. Cut type, again, this will be any cut feature, any hole in the ground. So you'll have something like post hole, or cut of post hole, cut of pit, cut of ditch. Below these top boxes, you can see, it's quite hard to see, but you have a tick list of descriptive terms, and for either for description or fill or for cut. And these are sort of numbered, one numerical sequence. And this is where a very sort of standardized system. So for the deposits or fills, you have number 1, compaction, 2, color, 3, composition, 4, inclusions, 5, dimensions, 6, excavation methods, and weathering conditions. So we go through these one by one and basically describe how hard the soil is, the color, which we can use from a Munsell chart, or we can just use our kind of description. So the composition is a kind of type of soils, the inclusions, whether it has lots of gravel, charcoal, etc. The dimensions obvious, and excavation methods and weather conditions kind of give us an indication of whether it was raining really heavily on the day that you excavated it, or things like that. All of this is in the handbook. The cut description, again, it's very similar. So if you're describing cut feature, it's the shaping plan and orientation, the slope, so it says sides, kind of the sort of severity of slope, the base, whether it's concave, flat, etc. break of slope, whether there's a kind of at the top of the feature, whether there's a very sharp sort of break of slope or whether it's rounded edges at the top, dimensions and depth, and method and excavation conditions, and other comments. So again, a very similar sort of tick list. So it's a very standardized way of us going through the whole sheet and kind of coming up with a very standardized description. In the middle of the sheet, we have our matrix box. This way you can see the kind of boxes that you fill in. So you put your context number in the middle of that. And this is our way of kind of generating our Harris matrix. So we describe our stratigraphic relationship, so what's above and below. And this fits into our broader matrix, sort of site-wide matrix. So we can then work out exactly where this deposit, this fill, or this floor surface, or whatever, actually, how that fits into the wider stratigraphic matrix. So we can then work out at a later date the kind of complete site phasing and where this fits. Below the matrix boxes, you have a series of boxes which are basically cross-referencing exercises. So things like cuts. If it's a cut, does it cut? What deposits does it cut? And this may be an opportunity to show where it cuts things in a kind of physical way as opposed to a stratigraphic way. Same with cut by. Is it cut by another feature? We have boxes like the plan number and the section number. These will be in centralized registers, so these numbers should exist somewhere else, but it's an opportunity for us to kind of cross-reference, so we have another record of those numbers just in case, for example, the plan register goes missing. Same with the sample numbers and the small find numbers. All of these numbers are entered from centralized registers, but it's an opportunity to cross-reference. Now below this is the interpretation box. So this is the box where you will have an opportunity to describe what you think the deposit or feature is. Now there's a tendency when people fill these out to kind of duplicate the information that they filled in the top of the sheet, just so if it's a cut of a post hole, someone might just write cut of post hole. However, this is where you want to try and start to think about how that feature or that deposit got there. So if it's a cut of a post hole, is it part of a building? Can you tell when you're excavating that it's associated with another 4 or 5 post holes in the area making up a fence line, or is it just an individual feature? Same with the deposits. You want to say, instead of just floor surface, you want to say something like it's floor surface associated with a building that you're excavating, or if there's any kind of that you're within a building we've already allocated other numbers for. You kind of try and put in a bit more information so we can kind of we can piece together a better picture at a later date. So it's not just a duplication of the information above. Now on the other side of the sheet we have primarily an area for sketch sections and sketch plans. Now we do scale drawings of most features that we encounter, but we might not do a scale drawing of absolutely everything. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of get another drawn record, and which will help us later down the line in the post-text process. Sketch section, again, there's a possibility if we have drawn a section that might go missing at some time in the future, so it'd be quite handy to have those sections. And the sketch plan, this is an opportunity to draw out a plan which may be slightly more multi-context than our single context recording. So this is where you might be you'll be able to actually draw out some of the other features that you might not stick into your single context plan, your plan of your one context, which gives us an opportunity in the post-text process to quickly kind of see where this deposit is and how it relates to other features in the area. So that's basically a brief kind of run through of the context sheet. You'll put your name in against these, so when you're filling them out, just do remember that this may be the only record that anyone will have of the feature that the only written record that the feature or deposit that you've excavated. So this may be used a long way down the line, it may be used years after it's been excavated. So it's worth remembering when you're filling those out that even though the thing that you're looking at may be fairly obvious, you've got to give it a fairly thorough description, because the person who writes this up ultimately may have no memory, may never have seen the site. So yeah, you've got to bear that in mind. Okay, thank you.